Welcome to my channel. So first of all, let's import our table. So in our table we have the patient ID, which we are going to be using in this analysis a lot. We have the gender, then the OCD date, very important. Next is the obsession type, also very important. Compulsion type, this one compulsion type. YBOCS score for obsession, and YBOCS score for compulsion. So I think these are the ones that we are going to be utilizing in this analysis. So it's a data set, an analysis for a healthcare center for their OCD patients. So let's begin. First of all, let's use the schema to make our typing easier. You run it. So it runs successfully. Then the first question that we'll be answering, first of all, let me type out all the questions for ease, So these are the questions we are going to be answering. Just 5 questions. It's not a very tough or lengthy project. So the first question is that we should count the number of patients by gender and their average OBS score. So coming to our table, let's view our table again. So the count of patients, we are going to be counting whenever we are talking about count here. Most of the time we're going to be counting the patient ID. Now it said that we should count number of patients by the gender, which means we are going to be grouping after counting, because whenever you see the count function, there is a group by that has to follow it at the end. So at the end of the count, we are going to group it by the gender, which is male and female. Then after that, or while doing that, we also find the average OBS score of the patient. So the average OBS score, where is OBS score? So we have the OBS score, we have obsessions, and we have compulsion. So we are going to be calculating the obsession score, not the compulsion score for now. So to do this, we have to write this query to answer these questions. You select the gender, comma, then you count. And what are we going to be counting? We are going to be counting the patient ID. So to make the writing of the query easier, for just come to, first of all, let's go back. You come to the table, the drop down. Okay, you come to the table, click on the drop down, then on the table, the OCD patient, you click on the drop down. Then under this column, when you come to the patient ID, you double click on it. When you double click on it, it types it out for you automatically. So when we count the patient ID, we are going to give it the alias of patient underscore ID, sorry, patient underscore count, because it's the count we are counting, comma. Then we are going to be finding the average of the obsession score. So but when we find the average, we are going to be rounding it off. So first of all, we'll type the round, then inside the round we now find the average. So we are finding the average of the obsession score. So you come to the obsession score, this is the obsession score. you double click on it. Okay, then you round it off to 2 decimal places, and we are going to give it an alias of, we are going to call it average OBS score underscored OBS underscored score. Then all this is going to be coming from our table. We come to the OCD patient and double click it. Then remember, where you have the count function, you are going to add the group by. So what are we going to be grouping it by? Gender. So you group by the gender. Then you run it. Okay, so this is the gender, female and male. Patient count is 747 for female, and the patient count for male is 753. So when you add the two of them, you're going to be getting 1500 in total, and that is the total number of rows we have in our table. The total number of rows we have in our table is 1500. So, and that comes about when you add these two rows, the female patient count and the male patient count. So coming to our next question, so from our next question, pardon, okay, it says that we should, from 1 above, calculate the patient count percentages. So we want to get the percentage of this 747 over 1500 times 100. That is the percentage of each of these. We want to calculate it from this table we have here. As you can see, this table is as a result of the first query that we answered. So we're going to be calculating the percentage from the first query. So all we are going to be doing is that we'll go to the first query and copy it, because we are going to be using exactly this. This is going to be our reference. So you Control C and then Control V, you copy. So but we are also going to be using the CTE table, which says that wherever you see the CTE table, you have to use the width with CTE. So here we have you write the width CTE. That is, we are going to call this whole table, this whole query, like this whole query that got this table, we are going to call it gender underscore count as, just to make everything look neater. You can skip this step, but just to make our work look neat and not just clumped. So this is our first table. Then our second table, because we want to calculate the percentage, our second table, we are going to get the sum of these two from our second table. So this is like a column and row, like a table. So you bracket it, then comma, again you add another table, you create another table, we call it total. That is our next table. And this is our next table. We want to calculate the sum of the patient count. When you calculate the sum of this patient count, let's calculate it first. So to calculate the sum of the patient count, select comma sum in bracket patient underscore count, and we call it total. That is the sum. We call the sum total count. and we are going to be getting it from this patient count from this table. Is this table that has count of patient ID as patient count. So we get the sum of patient count from this table. And what is this table called? Gender underscore count. So you copy, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, then okay. So as we have gotten the sum, now let's get our percentage. So to get our percentage, this is a table on its own, this is another table on its own, because it has select and from. If you run, because although this table is not dependent, is not independent, it's dependent on this gender count table. So had it been that it is independent, or if you replaced patient count and from count, from gender count, if you replace any of these, you realize that this table is an independent table, but it's getting its patient count from this table. So this total table is dependent on the gender count table. So regardless of that, or if you are considering that, you should know that gender count is a table on its own, and then total is also a table on its own. So now to get our percentage, we are now going to be selecting the gender, we select the gender, comma, we select the patient count, comma, this is select the patient count, we select the OBS underscore score, we select the average underscore OBS underscore score, comma. Now it's time to calculate our percentage. So to calculate our percentage, we do patient count divided by total count. So let's assume that we are using 747 divided by 1500. So we're not going to just write 747, we're going to calculate this whole column. So we do it patient count underscore count divided by the total count, which is what we got here, sum of the patient count, that is total underscore count. This we are getting this total count from our total CTE table. Okay, so you after dividing it, let's put it in brackets, you multiply it by, to get the percentage, anything that involves percentage, you have to add 100 to it, times 100. Now whatever we are going to get, we want to round it to 2 decimal places, so you now add the round function, round it by 2 decimal places, patient count, okay, comma, 2 decimal places, you close your bracket. Now let's call this the percentage. Okay, okay, so now where is this coming from? We are getting the gender, patient count, average OBS score from the gender count table, but we are getting the total count from the total table. So we are going to be joining these two CTEs. So first of all, you add your from the first one, which is the gender count, gender underscore count, and then you join it to the total table, join it to the total CTE table. So now there is something else you are going to add. This gender count city table, let's give it a G alias, and the total city table, let's give it a T alias. Now coming to this gender, select gender, you now give it G dot. You come to the patient count, you give it G dot. Come to the average OBS, give it G dot, indicating that it is coming from the gender count CTE table. Now this total count is coming from the total CTE table, so we are going to give it the T dot total count. So since we have this figured out, now let's close it and run the query. So as you can see, the percentage column has been added. Every other thing is the same, but the percentage column was added. So the percentage, they are very close in number, just a little difference. So the percentage of the female is 49.8 and the percentage of the male is 50.20. So moving on to the next question. It's asking us to count the number of patients that visited the clinic or the center every month. So not every day, just by month. So we're going to be counting the patients by month. We're going to be grouping by month. That's what this thing means. So but before that, we're going to do a little bit setting, we're going to be editing our setting just a little. So first of all, we set for my own MySQL, just in case your own MySQL runs into an error, this is what you're supposed to do. So you set SQL underscore save underscore updates equals to 0. Then you run it. Okay, the reason why I did this is that when I was practicing this project, this OCD diagnosis date is in text format, so I want to change it to a date format. And in the Excel format, in the Excel workbook, is written as month, day, year, but in MySQL recognizes year, month, day. So if you want to change this dates text column to dates, this is the process you follow. So after setting the SQL save updates to 0, then you write this query exactly as I'm writing it, unless your own has a different settings for other SQL writer, what do they call, PostgreSQL, SQLite, Microsoft SQL, that kind of thing. If yours is different, find the way to do yours. This for my SQL. So we update the table, and then you set the column equals to string to date, comma, percent month, small letter m, slash percent d, that is small letter d, slash percent capital letter y. So this is the format that my own, like the Excel worksheet, comes in. It came in the month, day, year format. So we want to change it to the we are coming now. So we have written the format it came in. Next, you write the where string to date. You literally just copy everything again. Ctrl C. Control V is not null. So you run this. Okay, let's refresh and see how it goes, or how it went. Okay, still in the text format. Now let's now alter the table. Alter table. Our table is OCD patient. Modify the column. Our column that we want to modify is it to the date format. So let's check again. Now it's now a date format. It's no longer in text format. It's now in date format. So we have done this. Now let's calculate the month by month, the number of patients month by month. So to calculate this, you write the following query. Select date format. The date format is, click on the date column, comma. So we just want to get the month. We don't need the day. We just want the month and the year. So percentage capital Y hyphen percentage small m hyphen, you don't write percentage D, you just write 0 1, then 0 0 colon 0 0 colon 0 0, then you alias it as month, comma. Now you say you want the count. This is going to extract the month without the day. Everybody that came from the 1st of January to the 31st of January, all of them, they are going to fall under just January 2013. The same thing for the other years and other months. Yeah, they are not going to include the day. They are just going to count everybody that came into the clinic or the health center in this particular month of the year. So now let's count the patient's ID. Patient count. Patient count is not here. Let's just write it. Patient underscore count from our table name is OCD. Control C, Control V. So month by month. Now let's order by month. No, let's group by month first of all, because wherever you have the count, you have the group by. Group by counts, group by patient ID. Well, let's call it group by 2, and let's just say group by patient count. Control C, Control V. Then no, we are grouping by month, not the patient count. Sorry, we are grouping by month because we want everything. We want everybody that came in a particular month to be counted as, to be counted under that month. So then we now order by month also. Okay. So for November 2013, the whole of November 2013, it had 9 patients. For the whole December 2013, it had 9 patients. The clinic had 9 patients. For the whole of January 2014, it had 13 patients. And for the whole of February 2014, it had 13 patients. March 2014 it had 15 patients. Please, I'm adding the S, just my accent and tongue. Then throughout April of 2014 it had 12 patients, and that's how it went, or it goes on until the last row. The last row is in 2022 November. So this is not a recent data set, but even though it's still a correct query. So we've answered the third question. Moving on to the fourth question. The most common OBS type, that is most common obsession type, and its average obsession score. The most common obsession type. So we are going to be using the column obsession type, and for our column, let's just obsession type. We have the obsession type column here. So obsession type, we have symmetry, religion, hoarding, harm related, contamination. So we want to know the obsession type that has the obsession type that has the most number of patients coming. So as we had 1,500 patients in total, we want to know how many patients came in and reported that they have contamination as the obsession, or harm related, or hoarding as the obsession, or religion as the obsession. So to do that, let's go back to our table, our workbench. So you select we are going to select and go to the column, double click on it, obsession type, comma, then count the patient ID. Patient ID as patient count, comma, then you round it up, round of average. No, first of all you calculate the average, but I just like writing round, put bracket, then enter inside the bracket or parenthesis and add average, then put another parenthesis. It's just easier. So average of what are we finding? The average of the obsession score. Obsession score, we have two obsession score. We have the obsession score for, we have two scores, one for obsession and one for compulsion. So the score we are going to be using here is the one for obsession, because we are using obsession type. Then we are going to be rounding it to 2 decimal places, and we call it, and we save it as, or give it an alias of average underscore obs underscore score. Then we are selecting everything from this table, and we are grouping by, since we have the count, the general rule of thumb is wherever you see count, you have to group by obsession type. So instead of writing the whole obsession type, we have 3 select columns, that is 1, 2, 3. So let's give it, we call this one 1, we call this one 2, we call this one 3. So let's group it by 1, that is obsession type. If not, you can just type the obsession type in full. Then when you group it by obsession type, you order it by the count. Order by the count, we want to know the most common. So when you order it by the count, you order it in descending order. So the count is 2, we call it 2. Order it in descending order, then you run it. we're not yet done. So the most common obsession type is harm related obsession type, which has a count of 333. The next in line is contamination, followed by religion, then symmetry. So but we want to know the one that is the most common, not all the obsession type. So to know the most common, you limit it to 1. When you limit it to 1, it just leaves the first row. So we have it here. Now the final question, the fifth question, what is it now? Okay. So it now says the most common compulsion type and its average score. So this question is just almost the same as the fourth question, except that for obsession type or for obsession, you replace it with compulsion. So we copy this fourth query and paste it in this fifth question. So instead of obsession type, we delete it and replace it with compulsion type. We double click here. Then instead of obsession score, we delete it and replace it with compulsion score. So then let's call this one average CO compulsion. Let's give it comp. And okay, I think this is it. But before we run it, let's know all the compulsion types we have. So we have washing, counting, checking, praying, ordering. So but to know the most common compulsion, you limit it to 1. That is the one that has the highest number of patients. We limit it to washing. So you get it here. If you want to limit it to the 2 most common, you give it limit 2 and you get washing and counting, but we are asked to find just the most common. So alright, that is it for this project. Please subscribe, like and share it to your fellow data analysts and data analyst friends. And I have other projects you can do. I have projects on Excel, projects on Power BI, and one other project on SQL. Throughout as we go along, God willing, we are going to keep posting more and more projects for you. I am going to keep posting more and more projects for you because it's just this channel is a one-man channel. So thank you so much. Please subscribe. It really mean a lot to me. Subscribe and like, and don't forget that the data set is in the comment section. All right, take care. Bye.